guys, this is Dark Straight Nurse the Truth. I hope everyone's having a great evening. So, tonight I'm going to talk just very briefly about a guy named Ziusudra. You ask, who is Ziusudra? Well, dear truth seekers, tongue tied again as usual. I'm so tired. But Ziusudra was a real man. And Ziusudra was a Sumerian king. So let's dig in. And at the end, we shall find who really he is in history and who someone copied from and made another person out of him. So, Ziusudra, he was a Sumerian, and his name meant life of long days. And he was from a place called Shuruppak, roughly about 2900 BCE, and is listed in the WB 62 Sumerian Kings list. Recension as the last king of Sumer prior to the deluge. So we are going to compare fact with fiction, expose the lie up against the truth. So we have a Sumerian Kings list that was found in all these other tablets that were found in King Ashurbanipal under his wonderful ziggurat in the library that was found. And the most wonderful things you could have ever find came out. He is subsequently recorded as the hero of the Sumerian flood epic. He is also mentioned in other ancient literature, including the death of Gilgamesh and the poem of early rulers, and a late version of the instructions of Shuruppak refers to Ziusudra. Akkadian Atrahasis, Unitipsham, and as well as the biblical Noah are similar heroes of flood legends of the ancient Near East. Although each version of the flood myth has distinctive story elements, there are numerous story elements that are common to 2, 3, 4 versions. The earliest version of the flood myth is preserved fragmentarily in the Eridu Genesis, written in Sumerian cuneiform and dating to the 17th century BCE during the first dynasty of Babylon, when the language of writing and administration was still Sumerian. Strong parallels are noted with other Near Eastern flood legends, such as the biblical account of Noah. In the WB 62 Sumerian King List recension, Ziusudra, or Zinsudu, of Shuruppak, is recorded as having reigned as both king and Gudug priest for 10 sars, or periods of 3,600 years, although this was probably a copy era for 10 years. In this version, Ziusudra inherited rulership from his father, Arupak, written Sukur I am, who reigned for 10 sars. The line following Ziusudra in the WB 62 reads, "Then the flood swept over." The next line reads, "After the flood swept over, kingship descended from heaven." The kingship was in Kish. The city of Kish flourished in the early dynastic period, soon after an archaeological attested river flood at Shuruppak, modern-day Tel Farah, Iraq, and various other Sumerian cities. This flood has been radiocarbon dated to 2900 BCE, polychrome pottery from the Jumdet Nasir period, 3000 to 2900 BCE, was discovered immediately below the Shuruppak flood stratum, and the Jumdet Nasir period immediately preceded the early dynastic I period. The significance of Ziusudra's name appearing on the WB 62 Kings list is that it links the flood mentioned in the three surviving Babylonian deluge epics of Ziusudra: Eridu Genesis, Unitipshtim, Epic of Gilgamesh, and Astrahasis, an Epic of Atrahasis, to river flood sediments in Shuruppak, Uruk, Kish that have been radiocarbon dated to 2900 BCE. This has led some scholars to conclude that the flood hero was king of Shuruppak at the end of the Jumdet Nasir period, 3000 to 2900 BCE, which ended with the river flood of 2900 BCE. Ziusudra, being a king from Shuruppak, is supported by the Gilgamesh 11 tablet, making reference to Unitipshtim, Akkadian translation of the Sumerian name Ziusudra, with the epithet man of Shuruppak on line 23. Now, the tale of Ziusudra is known from a single fragmentary tablet written in Sumerian, datable by its script by the 17th century BCE, Old Babylonian Empire, and published in 1914 by Arno Pobel. So it goes down to tell about how it started, about the creation of man, animals, founding of the first cities, and a missing section in the tablet. We learned that the gods have decided to send a flood to destroy mankind, and the god Enki, lord of the underworld of sea and the fish, warned Ziusudra, the ruler of Shuruppak, to build a large boat. The passage describing the directions for the boat is also lost. When the tablet resumes, it is describing a flood. A terrible storm raged for 7 days. The huge boat had been tossed on the great waters. Then Utu, the sun, appears, and Ziusudra opens a window and prostrates and sacrifices an ox and a sheep. Another break, the text resumes. The flood is apparently over, and Ziusudra is prostrating himself before An and Enlil, who give him breath eternal and take him to dwell in Dilmun. The remainder of the poem is lost. The Epic of Ziusudra adds an element at lines of 258 to 261, not found in other versions, that after the river flood, King Ziusudra they caused to dwell in the land of the country of Dilmun, the place where the sun rises. Dilmun is usually identified as Bahrain, an island in the Persian Gulf on the east side of the Arabian Peninsula. In this version of the story, Ziusudra's boat floats down the Euphrates River into the Persian Gulf rather than up on a mountain or upstream to Kish. The Sumerian word Kur in line 140 of the Gilgamesh flood myth was interpreted to mean mountain in Akkadian, although in Sumerian Kur did not mean mountain but rather land, especially a foreign country. A Sumerian document known as the Instructions of Shuruppak, dated by Kramer at about 2500 BCE, refers in a later version to Ziusudra. Kramer concluded that Ziusudra had become a venerable figure in literacy tradition by the middle of the 3rd millennium BCE. Now, with all the players that I had told you about, Unitipshtim, Atrahasis, Noah, and Ziusudra being the first one, and the Epic of Gilgamesh, there are similar stories or lines that go along with the biblical Noah. Like, the storm had swept for 7 days and 7 nights. An opening in the large boat. A sacrifice. A sweet savor to smell for God. And the Hebrew flood story of Genesis dates to at least the 5th century BCE, according to the documentary hypothesis. It is a composite of 2 literary sources of J and P that were combined by a post-exilic editor in 539 to 400 BCE. Swiss scholar Hans Heinrich Schmid believes both the J material and the P material were both products of the Babylonian exile in the 6th century BCE, that would put it in the 500s, and were directly derived from Babylonian sources. So, as we know, you have a group of people, and we have a church that puts this out, and we are to believe that Noah is the one, and he has sons, and that these Jews come off him. Well, now we understand that it was a real man by the name of Ziusudra, a real man that lived in Samaria, was a king, and was a Gudug priest. He was around all these gods. And he was the one that everybody followed suit with. There's never been a man named Noah. The story, as you've heard me say, was copied the Babylonian exile. Bits and pieces interwoven. But the gods gave Ziusudra extended life, breath. But in chapter 9 of Genesis, in verse 28 and 29, it says, "And Noah lived after the flood 350 years. Verse 29 says, "And all the days of Noah were 950 years, and he died." Well, the first one didn't die. Ziusudra did not die. They gave him breath eternal, and they sent him to Dilmun, which is in the Arabian Peninsula, by the story. True or not true. But in this Noah story, it's a lie. Twisted it. So then, truth seekers, I hope I have helped you today. And I hope that you will always continue to search for truth. Ziusudra, Sumerian king, on the Sumerian kings list that was found written in cuneiform clay tablets, which King Ashurbanipal had underneath his ziggurat in the great city of Nineveh. And they were found in the 1800s, about 20,000 clay tablets. That is the real story, my friends. Keep searching. Keep following. And you will break this matrix. Have a good evening, and we will see you next time. Goodbye.